energy. In this one, we're going to cover feminine energy. So, how feminine energy can be used to exploit and also be exploited. And I feel that though there are clear differences between the masculine and the feminine modes of operation, the root cause is the same for both or either. So I may be kind of going back and forth because this is the second part. We did the first one 2 weeks ago, and then I was late to do this one because I'm back to studying. So I'm not working as much. And so my time is really tied up. So forgive me for that. But I do have, pardon me, I do have a notice on my Etsy for full chart readings. I've temporarily discontinued because of constraints on time. Everything has to run like a well-oiled machine. So if you want anything, it has to be 3 business days in advance, minimum. Okay. Because I just don't have a lot of wiggle room and I try to accommodate as much as I can and be as flexible as I can, but I'm just wrapped up with so much. We back. Hey, Megan, welcome back. Thank you for coming and happy birthday again. It was this month. It was like almost 2 weeks ago, but it doesn't matter. Um, Beautiful girls are born in March. Okay, everybody knows that. I don't make the rules. It's just how it is. And February, okay? And January through December. But anyway, so please, if you want a full chart reading, I've had a few emails. You have to email me. We have to sort it out, but it really just has to like stick. And apart from that, I still offer solar returns. I do mini solar returns now, which will give you everything you want, just very condensed. And I still do compatibility readings. And I have had some inquiries, about 2 or 3 people who want classes to come back. So I'm happy to teach in April, but let me know what topic you're interested in. Aspects comes up a lot. And speaking of aspects, I do have a viewer here on YouTube in particular, Jupiter something. Your name is Rocky. Thank you so much. You leave really insightful questions. And I do have answers. I just like read things, then I forget to respond. But he asked about book on astrological aspects. Honestly, any book will do. I do find there are slight differences between Western and Eastern, but a lot of the Western books are very strong. I would focus on those, and you don't have to really reach really high. You can kind of find anything on Amazon or like your local bookshop or something like a chained bookstore. But I learned most things through classes, so and just practice, and that's it. So I don't have a particular book to recommend, but I'd love a class option. Yeah, we could do. I think people are always interested in love, money, but anything. Honestly, just let me know, and I'm happy to organize it. And I haven't done a class in 2 years, so springtime. It's been 2 years. Okay, so let's get into it. So, psychic vampirism. Part two, the feminine archetype. So let's just do a quick recap and some modern examples of the masculine vampire. Okay, you will find so many examples in media, literature, historically, present day. So let's say masculine vampirism, but I want to do the vampire and the victim. Okay, so we'll do Dracula, like literally Dracula is the vampire. I know, but a masculine victim in this case is Jonathan Harker, the lawyer who goes to his castle. So he was victimized by something, but not in a sense that he was fed upon, because what is vampirism really? Vampirism is like, I can liken it to narcissism, but it's not entirely the same, because only 2% of the world's diagnosed narcissists are a very tiny niche known as self-aware narcissists. I watched a documentary on this about like 15 years ago. I don't know if it's changed, but most people who are narcissists actually don't have any like self-reflection. They're not able to understand that they're hurtful or what they're doing is immoral or socially undesirable. Okay. Vampires or vampiric energy, the majority of them are conscious of their actions. They're not unconsciously vampiric. They're very consciously vampiric. They understand that they inflict pain on another, and they understand that they require that person to feed off of energetically. So in this sense, they're similar in that, like for narcissism, it's called a supply. You're actually their supply. They need you for their ego. And the same goes for vampirism, right? You're a food source, so they need you to feast upon. And in both of these examples, do not forget that you, as a victim or collateral damage or bystander, whatever, are actually more powerful than that creature or that beast, because they need you to live. They need you to survive. You don't need them. As the host, like a parasite needs its host. the host does not need parasites. It's considered an infection, you know? So just remember that even however terrible you feel, whatever the dynamic or situation is, you actually are in much better standing in life than the people who are causing all of this harm and discomfort in you, okay? So that's for starters. Now, to recap, that's the similarity, and you'll see a lot of overlap, but it's not entirely the same again. And then the masculine thing. So I said, okay, like Jonathan Harker, that's a simple one. Let's take a very modern day example of the masculine vampire. Okay, so vampirism, like I said, relies on the intention of another. These people have the inherent inability to self sustain. They cannot be self reliant. They need you for something or other. Okay. So, a modern example is going to be male podcasts. If you actually think about it, okay, without an audience, they have nothing. Without each other, they have nothing. So, what we can do, because I like history and reading all kinds of things about human development, self improvement history, especially, but prior to the industrialization of our civilization, people actually had more enjoyment in life. I know that today we like to blacken history. People died at 40, they had like dysentery, they were just broke peasants and brushing their teeth with sugar and they were toothless and sick. Not really. Actually, I watched a YouTube video this week that said, like in the Middle Ages, people had no free time. Look how much free time we have today. That's not true. That's actually, first of all, who does your research? Call me. Like, you need help. Like, how are you publishing that? Aren't you embarrassed? You should be embarrassed. But people had lots of leisure time. And not only that, people were defined by being. They were not defined by possession or acquisition of things as we are in the material age. Okay. In the modern age, we are defined by what do you have? A lot of people in their 20s who come to me, I've observed, I've been in my 20s, I'm 24. Um, they're stressed. I don't have a wife. I don't have a husband. I don't have a house. I don't have the job I want. I don't have the car I want. I don't have the body I want. The word have, to possess, but actually, you are spiritually and mentally and emotionally possessed by this need of ownership, which actually is not natural to you as a human being. You are infected by this thinking. And this is a form of vampirism, okay? Like the economic status, keeping up with the Joneses, competing, and so forth, okay? So when you watch these male podcasts, they lack a sense of belonging, which is essential to the human experience. We are a social mammal. We need each other. We need to cooperate. It's better for the world, okay? And I don't want to turn this into a gender war thing, but one of us gets it a little bit more than the other, okay, for whatever that's worth. Okay, so historically, there are reasons for that. Whatever, doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. But what has happened is these people come together and there's power in numbers and there's a lot of them, right? And they're listening and they say, well, if I have a lot of money, if I have the cars, if I have the house, then I get to have the girl that I desire, and she now has to make me look good because I'm stuck in the loop of acquiring, of acquisition. So she's got to have the body. She cannot have a high body count. But why? Like, actually think deep down. Why is that important to someone who doesn't even know how to bathe properly or can't spell? Because in terms of character and being, that character is underdeveloped, but they think they can supplement an underdeveloped character through possessing. Okay. And so what happens is, once in a while, as always is the case with human beings, somebody will rise to the top, get a lot of attention, and exploit that. But hurt people, comma, hurt people. We're not born that way. We're born whole and complete. So if you think about power podcaster, I think he has a podcast, I'm not sure, but Andrew Tate is an amazing example of a male vampire. Why? Because he even explained that his father was a terrible spouse, cheated on the mom, left their family, all this stuff. And this is, if you just look, like, honestly, look, read Oscar Wilde, read anything through history, like good literature, okay? How many men become villains because they had the example of villainy basically programmed into them. And so they think the only way they will find belonging, attachment, uh, a life that's satisfying, content, is through the actions of their emotional or energetic abuser, and they perpetuate that cycle. So what they do then is they get an audience, they listen to this, and they go out and vampirize other people as well. So while he's feeding on the energy of these young viewers, they're going out and doing the same, and then they're really confused why they're not happy. Okay, so that's an excellent example of energetic vampirism. Megan says they're dead inside, just like vampire. They are dead inside. And I mentioned how you do away with psychic energetic attachment from a male. It's slightly different from a female, but they're the same. They can both work. Okay. And also, just to say, I should say masculine and feminine because, like, a woman can have masculine qualities, like a man can have very feminine qualities. And this is something that you notice in vampirism is that it's not gender specific. So with these men who ask things that are ridiculous, like one guy made a TikTok, he's like, today you have to be financially stable just to date a broke girl or something like that. So that's a feminine quality, right? So it's so funny to me. So a lot of these young men today are actually they are demonstrations of feminine energy. So to say that they're okay, it's masculine vampirism, that's what Andrew Tate is, but his audience is mostly feminine. Okay. So that's really interesting to know. I mean, if you said that, their heads would blow off, but it's the truth. They act and think like women. It's very, very bizarre. And why that's important to them is that they want to signal to the other, they want to signal to their counterparts that they're ahead and they have what they got in life and these things really, really work. But really, all you need is a good character. But if you told them that, they wouldn't believe you, you know? So, anyway, I've got more to say on that, but that's a really good example of energetic vampirism. Okay. Now, let's discuss coming into feminine vampirism, which again, men mostly do in the modern age. Okay, they're sassy. Mina from the Universe Guru mentioned something about men having really like a lot of labeled things. That's very feminine. Because the point of like, we'll do it in maybe in another time, like in terms of Tantra, you're meant to come to the same conclusion on different paths. Okay, but basically, the showcasing of wealth is a woman's role. It's very feminine to be decorated, to adorn one's body. Like put on your jewelry, put on your fake lashes, comb your hair, whatever, right? That's not to say men can't look nice or be hygienic. No. But for men, it's to acquire and then direct what they've acquired towards a single source. So the funny thing with these podcasters is when they say like you have to have many B words, many lovers, get anyone you want, that's actually really feminine. Feminine energy is naturally scattered. That's actually how our anatomy developed is by having, access to multiple lovers. So for men to have high body counts is actually inverted. It should be the other way around. Also, we know through modern research that a lot of partners leads to dissatisfaction in relationships and likelihood to cheat and an inability to bond. But this is only present in men. That means a woman can have 8 boyfriends, marry the ninth one, and be happy forever. Because it just doesn't do the same thing to her brain that it does to a man's brain. So I find that really funny. Okay, she says, when you show up to a femininity contest and you're competing against the podcast man, you lost. You lost. Don't even step on the stage. They're crowning him with a little sash and his nipple tassels and his bikini. He's just one. He's the baddest. He's the baddest girl there. Um, so he's snatching your wig off. He's going crazy. Okay, they're so angry. But okay, um, I was talking about femininity. I forgot. Okay, anyway, so what is really interesting in terms of I forgot what I was saying. I'm so sorry that made me laugh so hard. But feminine vampirism. So I have a really good modern example. Shira 7. She mentions this one thing that's so profound that I love. Okay, and I want to make the distinction. Just because someone is charismatic, enticing, has magnetism, does not a vampire make. Energy or psychic vampires often mask the fact that they are. If you are upfront, you're probably not. Okay. So I, just say things for the sake of saying them. I don't really care who hears. But if I say I would never marry a man who is not as accomplished as I am, isn't interesting to me, doesn't provide me a living space, like why would I leave the comfort of my life to go struggle somewhere? That's a form of self abuse. It's crazy. You should have the intelligence or just a few brain cells to kind of like cause a spark of a thought and to think to yourself, that person is telling me upfront. They don't mess with people who are not stable and responsible. So they're not trying to use me because they've told me. They have a disclaimer. Okay. So I always come with a disclaimer because I don't care about that, right? That's not my idea of seduction. That's not my song and dance for romance. So oftentimes, vampirism is disguised as something. And this is something that you'll find in both genders, but generally attributed to the feminine. Vampire is what I like to think of as a veil. It's hidden, okay? It's a vulnerability. It's not really the case. So the damsel in distress is a very feminine approach. But in the modern age, you'll see just as many, if not more, men doing this. There was a Reddit. I'm like so new to reading those Reddit, like, would I be this so and so, and I'm so addicted to them. It's like a drug. But they have this one. This girl said, I've been with my boyfriend for 5 months. I own a house. My mortgage is 1,500. He rents a room for 800, and his friend owns this townhouse, but I think he works for like the Navy, so he's there like one weekend a month. And then he said he's going to sell it, move in with his girlfriend, so my boyfriend won't have a place to live come the end of the year. So he's asked me to move in, and he's going to cover like half the mortgage. And I'm not comfortable with that because I've only known him for 5 months and it's not my responsibility, and he has ample time. And he kind of like blew up on her, right? But that damsel in distress, that's a feminine characteristic, but you'll see men wanting a place to live, wanting you to do their laundry, wanting you to pack their lunch when they really haven't earned that place in your heart and your life. That is a form of vampirism. Okay. That expectation is vampiric inherently. Okay. So women who are damsels in distress have a really interesting psychological archetype. And I'm going to take this also out of the context of lovers. I'm going to put it into a family, and then it'll click so instantly you'll know you've seen it your whole life somewhere or other, okay? But let's say romance. So Shira 7 said this actually makes me laugh so much. She said when she wanted to move in with her now husband James, he's like 24 years older than her, he's very stable. She got tired of living at home. She cried and she said it was raining one night and I just showed up to his door, wet, soaking, looking pathetic, pulling my suitcase. I was distressed. I said I got into a fight with my mom. I can't stay there. It was like 3 months after they met her, so I don't remember what it was. And he's like, "Oh no, no, come in, like stay here." And so she just like, I just showed up. I just moved in. It just made me laugh so much. And I thought she knew exactly what she was doing. And then what this does, so she's a little bit more advanced. Obviously, she's way more advanced. But let's say the damsel in distress dynamic actually never has an end, because what it will do is when you refuse to come to the rescue of the victim, who's actually not, they're your villain in your personal story, they feel victimized all over again, and they lower you from the pedestal that they've supposedly put you upon. Because you are the bringer of good news, you're the victorious, you're their hero. You're their hero. And when you don't give them what they want, they challenge your status as a hero. They say you're a hater and you're holding them back. So you have no choice. So now what they'll also do is they will extend the groveling time. Hi, Miss Sini. Mummer. Oh, that's my next point. Okay. So they'll freeze you out. They'll give you the silent treatment. Okay. I dated someone like this, was a man, but he was like a super duper vampire. Like he was like a turbo sucker. Like he sucked, but he got it from his mom. Okay. So it was like generational, I swear. So anyway, so what you'll do is then you're forced to kind of a grovel to appeal to them until you are in their good graces again. And what they essentially do is they program you to think when you are in their good graces, you're in the good graces of your own self because you identify so strong with the archetype of a hero, the dragon slayer or whatever, right? That when they sprinkle you with their approval and forgiveness, you're okay again. It's almost like you don't know how to identify with anything else because you've identified so strongly with a servant mentality or a helpmate or something like that. I don't mean those in derogatory terms or anything negative, but like I know for me, I live to serve. I'm happy to help people. It doesn't really bother me. So I'm just programmed that way. I just like it. It makes my soul sing. But of course, people who are looking to exploit will find their way, right? So that's something to note. Okay. So what happens is this archetype is draining on men and women. And I say this a lot on my lives. It's really not good to over identify with a female group. I didn't say identify, I said over identify. where you I don't mean like decentering. You should decenter men should never have no, I don't even like saying decenter men. They should not have been centered in the first place. If they were for whatever reason, get rid of that. Fast, fast, sharp, sharp, okay? So what it does is women do this to each other, but they don't even know it sometimes. Because they think that you're a woman, they can't hurt you like a man can. It makes it okay. No, 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 no. Sometimes no one can hate a woman like another woman, okay? So be very mindful, okay? But this, in terms of energy balance, is a little bit more tantric or esoteric, okay? But feminine energy is inherently vampiric because we need something to create. We need tools. We need, a house to make a home. We need bodily fluids to make children or whatever, right? So when we do it to each other, we don't consider it abusive, but it actually is energetically, it's violent, okay? Emotionally violent. But anyway, so often I wrote, look, I'm so prepared today. I have notes. Okay, so often, what did I write? A charming and countenance. Feminine vampirism is quite charming. It can be very innocent, very playful, or like girly, or a little bit lost. Like I don't know, I'm just a girl. Like I'm just a girl. There's lots of things I don't know, but it's when it's weaponized that's like the problem. You know what I mean? But men also do this when they're like lovely or lovable and kind of dumb, but it's like weaponized incompetence. But women can also do that. Okay, so I want to um, make sure that you understand when there's an innocent playfulness. Sometimes it's actually not that innocent. They're just doing it to get you to perform for them. So there's actually one story I've told on the live a lot, and it makes me laugh. And this isn't, I wouldn't consider this vampirism, but it's very close. Okay, so a friend of mine in grad school had a really good friend close to from where she is. I mean, in the East, and they have caste systems. And this woman was basically a master manifester, but she didn't know anything about manifestation as we do, like law of attraction and all that, right? And she said growing up, she always wanted to marry like a businessman. So she would just daydream all day, every day about like having a husband in a suit who had lots of money and she wouldn't have to work. And everyone told her she was crazy and all this. When she met her husband, his family disapproved very strongly. She was illiterate. She couldn't read, she couldn't write. And he was like, I'll teach you everything. But he was just in love with her. She just had him completely enthralled. And you could see she activated his hero archetype. Like, I need you. I need you. What would I do without you? Long story short, years go by. He was like, I'm going to cut you off. You don't let me marry this girl. His family's like, oh my God, So it's like huge to do. He like pulls her out of this village, marries her, takes her to the city. He becomes like super successful. Like, I mean, like generational family wealth, like crazy money. Okay. He moves her to London in the UK, and she has children now. They've been married some years. They're quite young, like in their late 20s. And she meets up with my friend for like coffee and cake. And she's like, it's nice. Took the kids to school this morning. The driver dropped me off. But my friend's like, driver? Like, what do you mean, driver? You took the subway here. She goes, oh, yeah, I like the train or the tube. And she's just like, but why don't, because she remembered having discussions with her husband around this. So my friend asked, she pried a little bit. And she said, "Oh, I don't let him know that. He thinks, because they moved there 3 years ago, she said, "He thinks I'm scared to take the subway because I get so confused and English isn't my first language and I struggle with reading and all this. So I just tell him I'm so scared, and every 6 months or so he brings it up again and he says, we should like get rid of the driver. You should be more independent. You shouldn't." And she like freaks out, panics, like, what if something happens to her? What if the kids get kidnapped and all this? But really, the whole time when the children are not involved, she's like gallivanting around London with her Metro card, beep, beep, beep. And she can take the subway, but she's made him think that she's helpless and she cannot. And she's not about to ruin a good thing 'cause she's got it going. You know what I mean? So my friend just thought this is top tier master level gold digger. Like, we all need to get on your level. She's convinced this man she can't ride the bus, she can't read. So I mean, he's happy, she's happy, everything works out. But you'll see right away when he suggests something that she can do to improve her level of independence or self-reliance, she'll panic and then he'll feel guilty. But this happens both ways. If a man says, "Oh, I can make it, but I don't make it as good as you," or "When I wash my clothes, they're not as nice. They don't smell as good as when you do it." It's like, so then don't smell as nice, You have to know. But this is what happens. Basically, the person gets triggered and thinks that, oh my God, like, no, 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 no. Let's go back to, I've never said that before. Okay. It's so funny. So Sheer Seven moving in with James is such a very good example. And parents. So our viewer here just said, and our friend, My mother. You'll see this a lot with overbearing mothers. You'll see them do it to their sons, like my ex had done to him, and then he does it to other people. You'll see mothers doing it to their daughters. But this has been around forever. Like a Greek myth is like is a petri dish for, the Oedipus complex and such. So basically, the over coddling of children. So this is what we have the book, like, it's called The Vanishing American Adult, the vanishing of adulthood and the perpetual mental infancy of adults, primarily in Western culture. Okay. The entitlement. So basically what the mother will do is just like sigh. And then you go, oh my God, what's wrong? Then they convince you that you're the cause for their unhappiness, which you go into overdrive because as a child, you're programmed, you have fight, flight, freeze. You think that if this person doesn't love me, my ability to survive is stripped from me. I've got to keep them happy. But it's not just when you're a child. You could be 50 years old and catering to your parents. So they have you in it's emotional enslavement, essentially. It's mental enslavement. It's honestly, to me, not to be funny or crude, but it's a form of pimping. They say like any pimp can have his lady or women's or b words hearts, but a master controls the mind. The body is nothing. You have to control their mind, right? So in fact, effectively, this is what it is, right? They are like, you have to be at their beck and call. And you'll see this in the modern example. Speaking of Reddit, I'm going somewhere with this. How many nightmare mother-in-laws like exist on the planet, the world over, in every culture? Okay, it's not, this isn't normal. So that woman never really mentally ripened into a proper adult, and then she keeps her children in a state of childishness. So even when they are not supposed to be with their parents, they're supposed to cleave onto or hold fast to their wives. These boys, they're not men. They don't know how, right? So it's no bueno. This is not good. So the point of that, how a vampire wins, is basically hurt people. I'm going to, speaking of body counts earlier, use the modern theme of STDs. The point of someone like that, whether they're conscious or unconscious of their diagnosis, is irrelevant. When you're intimate with them, they pass it on to you. And actually, in vampire lore, what is vampirism? It's described as an infection of the blood. Blood in the occult is the highest symbol of the individual because it's their truly unique life force. Okay? It's truly unique unto you, unto yourself. So, therefore, they poison the thing that is truly you at your very core, your actual signature. And so, like an STD, this infection spreads, but it's an infection of the mind. Okay. So, what they'll do is they'll turn their children into versions of themselves by turning them against everyone else in their life. It's fascinating. Love that. Thank you. Never mentally ripened. That's, yeah. So, like I mentioned a lot of the time, maturity is not always so straightforward. Like, you could act like you're 16 in your 60s. Look at the Karen, epidemic, or like male Karens have always been around because male complaining has just been linked to like aggression or shows of masculinity. But it's just, you're 55, you're acting like you're 15. It's the same thing. Okay. You never really like evolved. So basically, what they'll do is they'll turn their children into versions of themselves, and that makes them proud, to go out in the world. But the problem really comes when their children, even if they're versions of themselves, do not allow them to feed on them as a food source anymore. Okay. So you'll see this a lot in cultures that utilize guilt tripping and that weaponize shame. They weaponize shame. You'll see this particularly in these family dynamics. Okay. So let's think of even a milder example, such as living vicariously through or over control on the life of the child. So today I'm going with mostly modern examples because I feel most people don't really care about like reading the stuff, Um, honestly, it's just more interesting. Like, I love pop culture, so let's take a particular family. They're pretty much an American dynasty at this point. Once upon a time, there was a lady who wanted to be someone. She had a failed pop career. And then she said, even in her own, I think it was like a documentary, she said, oh, I met so and he was 12 years older than me and a lawyer. Like, hello, cha-ching, cha-ching. So she marries him. They have a couple of children. over control. Yep, my mother gets violent if she cannot control me. Isn't that something? So we're going to talk about how to neutralize that later on. But she has her children. She remarries, has more children. And she even said in her book that she has mapped out the lives of her children from the start. Why? Why are all of these children famous for what we would consider nothing because they don't have talent? Okay. Their talent is business savvy, but it's not even theirs, it's their mother's. Okay. And I'm not doubting intelligence because I do think, is it Chloe, the one who doesn't look like the others? I think, like, I've never watched a single episode of my life, but I've seen clips on TikTok and like media and stuff. In my opinion, she's highly intelligent. She's the really smart one. Okay. And much to her detriment, she's also good-hearted, which is really unfortunate in this world. But you'll see the mother is a mastermind. And so, because she had this failed attempt at name and fame, she has pushed for her children to have that. Ironically, everyone except the male child, but that's very funny. It's very psychologically funny to me. So, these Kardashians basically are all being fed upon by their mom, whether they realize it or not. Now, you can say, "How do you know that? You've never met them. Um, they have what they have." Da, da, da. But see, at the start, I said it's not about having; it's about being. I don't know that they're happy. Look at the state of their relationships. Look at the state of their families. Look at their lives. I don't know that they're happy. I don't know that. I don't care either, right? They don't care about me. I don't care about them. But to me, it's not an example of a healthy, integrated life or psyche. Okay. So that's a really good example of a psychically vampiric mother. And then people will say, but it's not because she's made them all rich. She's done a good thing. I agree. I don't think she's a bad mom in one sense, but I think mentally she has such a stronghold on their thinking that you can say that maybe they believe they're happy, but because they never had an option to try other things, to live a private life, to fail in private, we will never know. And in fact, where our parents are concerned, our thinking is so subject to their opinion that most times we actually don't know. We actually are so unable to reflect upon the fact. I think Britney Spears said it in an interview long she was still like a teenager or maybe in her early 20s. It was a long time ago. And they said like, "Well, don't you wish you could have gone to your prom or you can go to the mall with your friends and no one recognizes you?" And she said something really she's wicked smart. She said something that really, really grabbed me as a young person. She said, "I don't know. This is the only life I've ever known. I don't know anything else. I don't know. How can I miss it? I don't even know what that feels like," right? She was like thrust into Disney from like the age of 6 by her psychically vampiric mother and father. Joe Simpson, Jessica Simpson, and Ashley Simpson's father is the same as a feminine vampire. And notice too how the women in these men's lives, Beyonce's father is another one. He cheated on their mom. You see, their wives are just like a prop. They're a means to an end. You get children out of them, and then you just do what you want with those children. Those children don't really have freedom. We don't know what Beyonce would have done if she didn't sing and dance. I'm not. She's a good singer and dancer, obviously, but we don't know that she's happy because she had her life planned for her. Okay. Yep, it's the mother. I knew someone who interviewed one of them and said it's the mother who has a lot of control and direction over her daughter's psyche. Exactly. So that's a really good way of looking at it. Now, culturally, too, we can see it in something to the effect of why a lot of people today earn and they're not happy, and we don't know why they're not happy. All right. Common example. Um, the parents will say, or let's in this case say mother or father, doesn't really matter. You have to get good grades. If you don't get good grades, I'm going to be mad, which means from this beginning, you have to earn love. That's not healthy. That's not good. You're lovable because you exist, not because you do something. It's crazy, right? This is why it's crazy when people ask about how much money you make or your body count as a woman, not as a man, as a woman. We're different but equal. Our paths are slightly differ. Okay. Um, a true mark of masculinity, for example, is being able to suppress lust and to control sexual energy. So men with high body counts to me feel like women. They don't feel like men, right? Women with high or low body counts just feel like women. It doesn't really matter because we're on different paths, right? So basically, people will say, "What do you do?" Doesn't matter what I do. What matters is, am I in a state of happiness? And so parents often overlook that when the children are young. So they'll say, "Did you get good grades? Did you clean your room? Did you do that thing I told you to do? Da 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 da, right? Then you get older, so you're earning the money. Maybe you've bought the house, you drive the car, you have the watch you want, the suits you want, the $1,200 whatever jacket you want, but you're not happy. Why? Because as soon as you say, "Oh, I want to do something fun or creative," you hear your parents go, "Oh, but does that make money? It's hard to make money as a musician or a painter. Like, please be so serious." Bah, 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 bah. You know what I mean? So right away, you are taught that what you want is not desirable or important. What the mother or father wants is far more important. So this mental control can start very early in life, and sometimes it can be disguised as discipline. Like I'm pro, like I had disciplinarians, and I'm happy. I feel like they showed me that they cared about me. They cared about my development as a person, but it wasn't out of control. You know what I mean? So that really depends. Okay. So I mentioned vampirism STD. The aim is to infect the other with whatever thing they have, whether it's done consciously or not. So it's an infection that spreads. Okay. So, like I said in the in law example, it's the aim is to turn you into versions of them. Okay. But you still serve them. So if you try to break away, it's a problem. So vampirism is not true power. Okay. And I said women are often, I wish I could read my own writing, target their sons. So disempowered women make disempowered parents who create disempowered children. The same goes for men. I'm just using the mother son or the mother to daughter dynamic. Okay. Now, disempowered people can also happen. I said this is a perfect feast for two. This actually happens as well. You'll see this in codependent relationships or people who need each other. And what does that saying go? I don't love you because I need you. I need you because I love you, right? That's like more pure and godly, and that's wonderful. Okay. So effectively, you can have two disempowered people. So you can have two vampires in relationship together. And you can say, how can someone who's a victim be a vampire? Do not underestimate this. This is so incredibly cunning and clever. Okay. What you do is you put yourself in a state of perpetual victimhood. There's two pop stars that come to mind immediately. One that's always beefing with people, but is somehow always a victim. I don't understand. They like hold all this power, but they're always like, "How dare you say that? It's sexist. It's not feminist. It's because I'm a woman. Why do you care who I did?" What it's like, why are you always talking about it? Like, girl, no one asked. You know what I mean? And the other one I've been saying from day one, so don't even try. Okay. To this day, they're like in running a race in the victim Olympics against themselves, and they're always winning. Okay. Okay. So are you sure about the parenting thing about loving kids no matter or not? I don't understand. Remind me of what I said. I've known womanizers who felt comfortable having affairs and putting their children through divorce. And the grandma says, I love you no matter what. So he has no standard to, he has no moral standard to live up to. So I've known womanizers who felt comfortable having affairs because they were overcoddled. Well, that's the result of overcoddling. And I have a separate issue with that I'd like to talk about one day on TikTok is I never wanted to say it because I'm not married with children, but I know my friends who have been divorced, and they were basically cheated on. And I never wanted to say anything because I'm not in their shoes and I don't want to speak out of turn, etc. But I'm confused. Okay, so we'll talk about this another time. The cluster B anthem. I'm gonna they'll say I left my husband because he was unfaithful, he broke our vows, but he's a great father. He's a good father. I'm not going to restrict access to our children. No, he's not. And you should restrict access because if someone breaks their vows to you and mistreats you, whether it's financial betrayal, emotional, sexual, whatever, okay, abuse, whatever, they cannot be a good moral example or or anything to your actual children. They are now the product of divorce. They are not in a position to shape minds or hearts. Stop it. Okay. If you want time off and you want split custody, that's totally fine, but say it as it is. That is not that you cannot be a good parent if you're a terrible spouse. That's not possible. It's not because you've chosen to make children with someone, they're going to absorb that. A friend of mine's sister said something that really resonated with me, and I'm going to take this advice. She said to her sister, 'cause she has children, she said, don't have children with a man that you don't want another version of in the world. Because if you had a son with a man who wasn't a serious person or an honest person or made you feel terrible, you're literally creating another him and letting that version roam the world, waiting to prey on another woman, only have children with men you would like to see more of in the world. And she said that's how she decided on her husband. He's a good man. He's a good man. She's given him 3 children. God is good. Okay. So bear that in mind. But anyway, I don't understand what you meant by that. Are you sure about the parenting thing about loving kids no matter or not? I don't know what I said. Okay. So this is a slightly different thing, but a woman's love is inherently unconditional because it's biologically wired. So we'll talk, maybe you'll do another live about archetypes, so patriarchy and matriarchy. In societies where women have a little bit more influence or considered superior or at least just equal to men or they're just likable, like I come from that culture where women are just like respected and they're precious and tender and you're supposed to protect them. Even if you're a stranger, you're supposed to take an interest in their well-being. Men like dating, they enjoy courtship, they enjoy marriage, not like here. I feel in the West, there's this weird dynamic of she has trapped me or dragged me down the aisle. That doesn't exist. Like men go skipping to matrimony. You know what I mean? But because a woman's love is biological, it's just a lot more profound and runs deeper. That's true of feminine energy and what we would consider matriarchy. Under patriarchy, love is earned because men don't have that feeling. So the father's love, like we're talking about Andrew Tate, everything he does, even though his father's no longer with us in his head, is to prove something to someone, to earn his father's love, to be as big as he is, or strong and as smart and as rich and have as many options for sex, right? So it's not pure. It's earned through action. And I mean this only for unconscious men. Okay, men who are enlightened and evolved and kind, they will just love their children. Not like Bradley Cooper. He said for like 8 years he didn't care about his daughter. Like, keep it to yourself. That's so weird. You're weird. You're weird, man. You are weird. I would love to meet you one day and just sort of like scoff, just like, oh, disgusting. That is crazy. And he's not even that young. Is he like pushing middle age? Like you're not supposed to put the inside thoughts outside. And for everyone's like, there's such a stigma. So that someone's talking about it. Don't encourage that gobbledygook. Jesus Christ. You said something like kids should not have a condition to meet to be loved. Yeah, they shouldn't. Usually by the mother they don't. But when the mother does impose those conditions, which is a very masculine quality, it warps the child's sense of self. It robs them of their self-worth. The love and attention of a woman is a luxury. Exactly. Okay. So that's the first thing. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Okay, but so this is the modes of how we express love. But true love is knowing how to say no. If you don't know how to say no to somebody, if you're an inherent people pleaser, you actually don't know how to love anyone. And therefore, no one knows how to love you. They love the fact that you approve of them. They love the fact that you make life convenient for them, that you're easy to use and exploit. But they don't love you because they don't have anything to get to know. You're a void. An endless nothingness, an endless emptiness that they get to fill. You're a vessel that only the intention of others can fill and sustain. Okay. And your anguish in turn sustains them because they have control over you. So true love is knowing how to say no. And that's why I said earlier, I'm glad my parents were strict because they said no to me. It showed that they cared about me in a way, you know? Amen. Amen. So knowing how to say no to someone is good. Enabling them is not good. And so when you said the thing about the grandma loving her son, who then goes and walks out on his wife, that's not love. She's not going to be like, yay, broken family, broken home, yay, generational trauma, yay. She's going to whoop him. She's going to say, I did not raise you to be like this. How dare you? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I don't mean coddle. That's in like Jungian archetypes. I think he calls it the terrible mother. There's several of them, but no, that's not unconditional love. That's unconditional stupidity. Okay, so okay, here's another form of vampirism. People who cannot let go, people who are stuck in the past. Okay. And a friend of mine recommended I listen to the song by Taylor Swift. I forget what it's called. You left me. It's such a haunting song. It's so well written. So like I had it on repeat all week. And I was thinking about this and I was like, yeah, that's also a form of vampirism. People who just cannot let go of your wrongs. They always bring them up. They always throw them in your face, as it were, right where you left. Yes, such honestly, such a tune. Like dust collected on my pinned up hair. What a line. What a line. And it's funny because in the Great War, she has this line about her hairpin trigger. So she has this whole like hairpin analogy. I don't know, but I like it. I like the consistency of it. It's for continuity. Okay. Growth. So she's her the egregore that she has with her fan base, believe it or not, people will not care to hear, but it is a form of vampirism as well. Okay, but anyway, so people who can't let go. Okay, let's get back on track. So I said the Kardashian mom living vicariously through her children and basically see them do what she felt that she could not do, and then through them she now has name and fame that she did not. I can't say she didn't rightfully earn it because motherhood is a lot of work, and she gets credit where credit is due. But the fact that she did it through her children rather than having such something like a talent agency or whatever, that's the part that's a bit worrying. Okay. And the fact that it's all of them. It's not like she did it with like one or two. She like put them all in the front lines and was like, soldier on. We're selling this. We're exploiting that. I want to know more drama, drama, drama. These people will never know peace in their life. You should get Guru Grit reading. Call me. Okay. So how to fix. So slightly different from honestly, they're pretty much the same. This is my opinion. It's the same. A vampire is a vampire, but we're talking about feminine vampirism. So it doesn't have to be a woman who's doing it. It could be a man who's doing it as well, like constantly bringing up the past or something, some nonsense. Okay. However, the masculine vampire needs to be met with a more masculine force, which is to say the um, analogy of beheading. So they die by beheading. They die by being staked through the heart. It's a form of action. It's violence, being burned alive in the light of the sun. The sun is a symbol of God's consciousness. So being self-aware will ultimately cause the masculine vampire to be done away with, right? Feminine vampirism is not rooted out through sudden action. It actually takes a bit of thinking. It's a bit more nuanced. So the way to undo feminine vampirism, whether it's a parent, a boss, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever, a neighbor, anything, takes self-reflection, and it takes a bit more calm, because what happens is the feminine vampire operates under a guise. So, like I said, it's innocent or it's playful and it like pretends not to know things. If you sat them down and said, I think you actually do know how to take the subway. I found this Metro card in your wallet. They're going to explode and say, that was my friend's. I was holding it for them. How can you accuse me? Remember the time you did this and you lied about that? I went on your Instagram. I saw your likes. Da, da, da. So they're going to, if you criticize them, they criticize you back, and it starts all over again. You are now fallen in their eyes. You're no longer honorable. You're no longer, gentleman or lady or whatever, right? If you come to and bring up your issue with them, even when they're feeling good and happy, doesn't matter. They're triggered all the same. They're triggered all the same. Okay, so you cannot fight fire with fire. It's not so like head on like the masculine vampirism. How to fix this is I put knowing is power. So not performing. Okay, so I put icky losers on Reddit not realizing they are not special. All right. So this is what I meant. When you go through those Reddit things and they're like, they just make me laugh so much. They really do. When they say, I I go to work and I bring home a paycheck just like my wife, but I kiss my kids goodnight. They never take into account that their wife also goes to work, or it's the quintessential the divorce came out of nowhere. You were just dude, you were just a like a garden snail. You were holding everything down. Okay. You were just not moving along fast enough. You're not keeping up with the program. And they don't want to give credit where credit is due. So in this case, I'm using, yes, a man, but he's a feminine vampire. So he's siphoning off the energy off of this woman like a parasite. She doesn't need him. He needs her. And then they'll say, "Oh, she left me." And then they go, "Oh wow, I didn't realize I wasn't special. She's doing it all without me, or I've been replaced. Or they leave to chase a younger, friskier partner because, again, they're not mature. At the end of the day, you just realize um, intimacy is intimacy. That, like, what, 5 to 7 minutes in the dark with your eyes closed, it's the same. unless you have a truly special bond with some, but they throw it all away. They blow up their family for like 7 minutes in heaven. And then they're like, oh my God, I'm not special. I'm not special. I'm disposable, dispensable, just like everyone else, just like everyone I've treated before me. It's a very rude awakening. Okay. So knowing is power here, knowledge, strategy, and planning. And so here, in the first part where I mentioned the significance of a mirror, how vampires have no reflection, is because they're empty without you. They need you to feed upon. They need your life force. They need your blood, which is your signature, right? They need a collection of victims to be remotely who they are. They're just too weak. They're simply perish, right? So what happens is you simply have to hold up a mirror and show them that you know them, that you can. Um, so Megan said, that is why men remarry expeditiously after a woman initiates divorce. They have nothing to feed off of. Exactly. Brought the thunder today. Megan's bringing the thunder. That's the truth. Because they need another life source. I mean, somebody even said something on TikTok once. They said, I was so shocked. My grandfather was married for 53 years. And when my grandma died, within a month or two, he was asking us to make him a profile on like a geriatric dating website so he could find another wife because he needed someone to tell him to take his meds and all this, cook for him. It's as though she never existed. She was just there to keep him alive, right? So he sucked the life out of her because he outlived her, which is very rare. And a friend of mine also, her father cheated on their mother their entire marriage, and she finally got fed up, and he married his secretary, who's a good 2+ decades younger than him, and she was new to the country and all this. Obviously not, she's an immigrant, English is not a first language, not highly educated like him. He's extremely accomplished. And I said to my friend, how does he move on so fast? And out of the plethora of lovers he's had, why did he fall in love with her? I'm just curious because it sounds to me like he's using her. I mean, maybe financially she's got a good deal. I don't know, but it doesn't sound like it to me, you know? And she said he went from living in a beautiful house in a very prestigious city and all this to like a one-bedroom apartment. So he got bled dry because he should have. He did this woman very wrong. And she said, "Oh, I don't think he even cares. She makes sure he takes his meds in the morning and makes his food." She said she's literally keeping him alive. He would have been dead 15 years ago without her. I don't know that they love each other, but it works well for him. Do you see what you just said? That's the truth. They just need someone else to feed off of and keep them on track. So I thought that's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. But we can all collectively like do better. Okay. So being able to show that person that you've reflected upon them and that you know them, and then encourage them to reflect upon themselves. Okay. And again, if you hold up the mirror, they can't see you, they see themselves. So, in a way, you are revoking access to yourself somehow emotionally while physically kind of being there at the same time. But it has to be subtle. This is a bit more nuanced and this is difficult for me to articulate because if you just don't feel it, I don't know what to tell you. But if you're in such a situation with, let's say, a parent or a friend who just they've got their talons in you, they're about to like fly away like an eagle, and you're just like a helpless little lamb. You cannot expressly just say, I know what you're doing. It's not okay. They will explode and then they will feed on you some more and then they'll probably drag your name and da da da. Da. Okay. So I was thinking about this. I was listening to Taylor Swift last night, great songwriter and all that, great tunes, great gowns, lovely gowns. And I was thinking, why is this is such like an energy, like I feel it in my solar plexus. I'm like, it's so familiar, but I don't know why. And then I don't know why it just kind of clicked for me. Like, I think she's an only child, like stable parents and all this. I was like, oh my God, she's this generation's like Marilyn Manson in a way, like energetically. Not really. So we know him as this terrible person who did terrible things, right? Masculine vampirism. He took action to abuse women badly. And then for me, I thought about, I was like, yeah, she's never laid a hand on anyone, I assume. But energetically, it's the same. She's like socially vicious. She's culturally vicious. You can't say a word against her. You're terrified. I think that one, like, I don't know, like, I think like when she goes into her interviews. I think the staff is terrified. They're like, look at her the wrong way, or say the wrong thing, or get sued, or get slapped with charges, or anything. I'm just like, yeah, that's just like a juggernaut. You don't mess with that person in that industry. So that's so funny to me because women are generally socially violent and socially vicious. So very much the bullying isn't obvious. A woman is less likely to stuff someone into a locker and give them a wedgie and whatever else, right? I don't know. I had a good time in high school. I can't relate. But um the bullying is an emotional and psychological warfare. It's like the Cold War. Women are like experts at Cold War tactics. We're just kind of like made that way. That's why like we silently do things. Remember those like Renaissance poison rings? You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's basically how you would do it. You can't expressly just go in there and kick down the door and say, I know what you've been doing. It's going to have serious consequences because they're going to drag your name and they're going to ruin your life. It has to be very subtle. You have to subtly, talon by talon, just claw by claw, just pull it out of your skin and slink away peacefully. Okay, very very peacefully. So knowledge is power in this sense. All the things we do for love, isn't that crazy? All the things we do to feel wanted and needed. So wild to me. Anyway, any questions whilst I'm here? And I just a few updates. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but I think I did. Still doing full readings. I'm back to studying, so I'm a bit short on time. And unfortunately, I'm not working as much. I need to be working to be paying for my books. So just what it is, it's temporary lull. But I'm going to obviously keep offering them by email only. So if you can email me if you want a whole chart analysis, then we can arrange it if I have time that week or something like that. And then otherwise, I can offer the usual mini stuff like mini solar return. I think I still have some of the year ahead readings, um, compatibility. T Swift has a ton of Ashleisha in her chart. So that's a really good observation. And Ashleisha is the master manipulator. And the tactic of the female vampire is shame, manipulation, social ostracization, and guilt tripping. So the woman's weapon is very, very, it's not like you carry, it's not like you have nunchucks and you do like this stuff, okay? It's all mental. It's like master strategy. So when people say, "Oh, if I was a man, you wouldn't criticize." Yes, we would criticize you because that's not natural to a man, and that's like um Andrew Tate. Everyone's like, "This isn't normal. What do you do?" He gets roasted all the time, rightfully so, but that's not, we're not calling out because you're a woman. We're calling it out because it's unethical and it's morally devoid, it's morally reprehensible. It's not good, okay? So, interestingly enough, we can talk about nakshatras another time if you're interested, but the path to true female power actually is the Ashleisha nakshatra. So, as much as I don't enjoy seeing that in a chart in some people, if it's utilized correctly, it's a very powerful tool, especially for a person practicing tantra. So, for me personally, Ashleisha for me in my chart in there's a subsection, whatever, we'll talk about another time, but it's my nakshatra of bad fortune. So I'm supposed to avoid Ashleisha. So that's a really interesting thing because I'm very tamasic. So I clearly incarnated to do difficult things. So I do everything backwards. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to use these people as teachers and admire them and just, figure it out. So I can't criticize and judge because there's value in everything. And ultimately, Shlisha is a snake and the serpent is the symbol of knowledge. It's incredibly ancient. It's such an ancient symbol. It's so wise. And I've even read something I really, really like in that the serpent wasn't really a snake. The serpent was Lilith. So Lilith has, in some vampire lore, been described as the first vampire when she was thrown out of the garden for her disobedience. And this is something that you'll find in vampirism. If you disobey, just like a narcissist, if you disobey them, you're in trouble. You cannot be saying no to these people. This is going to go south very quickly. So basically, Lilith came back to slither and her forked tongue piercing the ear of Eve so hard, she told her to eat the apple, right? And then when God sent his angels, she slithered off into the darkness to keep safe. So this is where this manipulation kind of comes from, that Lilith was the first snake and the first vampire and all this corrupter and all that. But really, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And just like Cat Williams, I've always held to the belief, people say, why are you saying that? Be the bigger person. Don't do this. Do that." When you mistreat me, you make a conscious decision to be that way. And I'm not gossiping. I'm not being negative or rude. I'm recounting the events of my own life. It's, in fact, my business. It is my business. I'm free to say whatever I want. If you, Cat Williams said, if you wanted me to speak of you kindly, you should have treated me better. That was your doing. Okay. I tried the subtle approach and led to violence. If my mother feels a shift in the environment, she just reacts. She doesn't need a reason. She had me taking care of the home, cooking for her and dad, my brothers and their families when they visited almost every day. I stopped slowly, and every single thing I stopped doing leads to fight because you're taking action. I said you can't take action. It has to be emotional and energetic and mental. It's because you cannot stop doing the things you're doing. You have to emotionally detach from those things. And because women too are especially in tune with change of, you mentioned, you use the word environment, is the best word. Environment. Yes. They can smell it like a change in the air. So cook, but don't do it joyfully, or burn something, but still do it, you know? Um, okay, so maybe we'll do a third part in how this plays out in our relationships, because what tends to happen is we then move on to relationships unconsciously, and we tend to attract people who will play out those tragedies, basically Greek tragedies, over and over and over again. They just never have an end because they're trapped in our psyche. That's why um, I remember being in university, and my first year, I think took something like, I don't know, like women in culture. I don't remember. And it was something to the effect of, how we're so lucky. I was like, "Nah, nah, 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 nah," like, women in the West are so lucky. We have feminism. We suckle the teat of everything men say to us. And they were saying how horrible arranged marriages are. That basically, I mean, it was just so out of pocket and so wrong, that all these people were unhappy and they did it against their will and da 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 da. And I remember thinking, I mean, if you're 8 years old, obviously it's abuse and that's crazy. But if you're 28 and this is the only thing you've known, and everybody you know was married through an arranged marriage, and how do you know anything else? And then it turns out, statistically, arranged marriages are actually longer lasting and happier than marriages by choice, what we would call in astrology or in some Eastern cultures a love marriage. The reason is that when you seek a spouse, you are usually unconsciously looking for something. So if you had an emotionally avoidant father, you're probably going to choose someone who's emotionally avoidant, and you have to earn their love. So you have to do the cooking and the cleaning and have the low body count and the high paycheck, and you just have to be everything. You have to be a Swiss Army knife. You have to serve it on a platter and then spoon feed it to them, because they're never going to effort to earn you. But you think this is love because this is what your father was, just kind of emotionally absent, physically present, totally checked out, lights on, no one's home. Okay. And so when you have this realization, you're horrified. Be the man they never were. Yeah, you got to be the man. You got to do it all, right? But when you're in an arranged marriage, that doesn't factor in because that's been taken out of your hands. So you actually end up a lot better off, 'Sadly, arranged marriages work. 98% success rate. Apparently, the reason is less expectations. Okay, this is true. So I'm going to tell you, I had a coworker, and this is another thing. In astrology, there are tiers. There are tiers for marriages when you're matching charts, and just as individuals. People who have community and religion at the core of their pair bonding actually do a lot better, because there's a spiritual factor. A lot of the times people marry because, okay, we're 28, what's the next step? I hear that a lot of time. It's logical. It's the next logical step. That's not logical at all. You don't have a moral binding. You think you do until you live it and you realize you don't. It's a godless relationship, okay? But you need some type of moral fiber, okay? Even if you're an atheist, I'm not saying, but you need something there. So this girl, she like grew up here. She's from Southwest. She's from, I don't remember exactly where, but I know she's from Sri Lanka. And she said, I grew up here, I went clubbing, I slept around, I did all that stuff. And then she said, no one was serious. Like, she goes, people outside of our culture, in my culture, they were just too westernized. So she said, I've had it. I'm bored of the same thing every weekend. I want to get married. And she said, my parents like dropped a plate because she goes, I was the one who always did everything opposite. She goes, I went up to them, told my parents I want to get married. And they said, haha. And she said, I'm serious. Go home and find me someone to marry. And they thought, no, she's kidding. Within 3 months, she was married. That month, they booked a ticket. A month later, they went to Sri Lanka. Her parents got to work. They found her someone. Okay. Couple years older than her. Nice Christian boy, a virgin. And she said, we were married, met for a month, married a month later, brought him to Canada, got him papers. And what happened? She just wanted to be married. So she just wanted someone who would act like a good husband. At this time, they had 3 kids and they were happily married for 10 years. She said, this man did everything for me that he could. So he came here with nothing and gave her everything. So people always think of money. No. When they moved here, they lived in a room in the basement of her mother's house because they couldn't afford to go anywhere. She was a nurse. So he called a nursing agency to get work as a sitter. That's just people who sit beside the beds of um, dementia patients so they don't get up and wander or like hurt themselves. So if she did a night shift, he would ask for a night shift. And he didn't have a full-time job. He was just on call. So he would try to say, this is my wife's availability. I want to drive to work with her. He went and got his license, became a sitter. Okay, little money, saved it, enrolled in a course to become a support worker, saved that money, became a registered practical nurse, an RPN, 2 years of college, worked at the same hospital as her, saved that money, went to school, did 2 years of university to become a registered nurse like her. He came with nothing and proved to her that she's not going to regret that she married him. Hmm? Then they are now 2 nurses. They bought a house, and she said, I really fell in love with him when I was pregnant with our first child. She said, although he was a virgin, he's the best I've ever had. Everything he does to make me happy. Like he gets along with everyone. He doesn't say a bad thing about anyone. We're like madly in love. She said, when I was pregnant with our first child, even when he didn't have work, and morning shift for nurses is like 7:15 or 7:30. So she lived outside of Toronto. So she would wake up around, depending on the weather, maybe quarter to 5 or 5 a.m. and set off early on like this train or drive in. It's like a nightmare. It's a very congested city. She said he would wake up way before dawn. He wouldn't wake me up. He would wake up and get up. He would go to the kitchen and hand squeeze an orange and bring me a glass of fresh orange juice to bed every morning. Every morning. Even when she was like at the 8-month mark and she stopped working, he would still do it. He would have that glass of orange juice on the nightstand before she opened her eyes. She said that small daily action of bringing me a fresh fruit juice just won her heart, and it never slid back. It only went up from there. It only got better from there. So that's a man. Okay, so this is what I mean. He came with nothing and proved to her that she should have been married to him. Okay, he's like an anti-vampire. He's a giver. He's not a taker. So they have a beautiful life together. Okay, and that was an arranged marriage from like a very modern, whatever girl, westernized, whatever, just modern comes to mind, but doing all the things everyone else does. But she came to the realization there's no love here. Love here is transactional. And so she opted for someone from her own culture who understood marriage is for the sake of being married. It's not a fantasy. And astrologically, when we look at indicators of marriage, there are 2 planets. Venus is the planet, obviously, of relationships and harmony, love and romance. And Saturn is the second indicator of marriage, which has nothing to do with any of those things. Saturn is karma, lessons, time. So it's supposed to be long lasting. And Saturn rules duty, to do things for the sake of doing them. It's not about you, it's how you can serve the other person, how you can be at their disposal humbly. Okay. And that's what he did. It was very Saturnian. And as a result, he won her over as his Venus, as his Aphrodite. And she showers with him with love. She's given him multiple children. They're happy. It's two pancakes. Okay. So that's how you get rid of the vampire psychology. Um, and another thing too, it's so funny because I remember Shira Seven saying something about demons or like making deals with demons. Okay. Um, Demons oftentimes, like in magic, they want something for something. And once the deal is struck and complete, they always come back like grimy little salespeople who are like, "Look what I have, look what I have," and you're just like, "Oh my god, like leave me alone, this is over." And Shira said, "I don't make deals with demons. Like, if you want to give me something, give it to me as a gift, or don't. I don't make deals." And that's how I feel. But you see, a vampiric energy is stuck in this loop where it's always, well, I put the kids to bed, so why don't you want to sleep with me? Or I did the cleaning. Why are you tired? Now we can do it. No, 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 no. It's conditional. Exactly. Do it or don't do it. Clean because the cleaning needs to be done. And don't do it for me. Clean because it needs to be done. Wash the dishes. The dishes need. Don't do it as it's not a favor. You live here too. I don't clean toilets for joy and fun. It's because they have to be clean. It's not an emotional decision. It's a rational decision. But again, you cannot reason with the unreasonable. Do not try to reinvent the wheel. These people are just on their own frequency in their own world. But basically, that's how you would break out of it. You cannot question the action. They'll go berserk, as our friend said earlier. You have to mentally start to inch away. And sometimes mirroring behavior can be a little bit helpful around that. But anyway, so yeah, arranged marriages are great because you don't have to factor that in. So another thing, as you mentioned, Ashleisha, Megan, is Ashleisha in men I don't like in particular because not because it's the nakshatra itself, it's that people are just generally so unconscious. And I only had one. I remember her name to this day. I had one client about 2.5 years ago who sent me her chart and her partner at the time. And she has a very strong Ashleishic presence, really, really a lot of occult things, right? And I said to her, you're a very tit for tat person, and this person has to serve you for life. This is your dynamic. Anyone that you're with has to be at your disposal. You're really not one to do people favors. You're really not one to be helpful. You're very self serving. I said, he has to make your life better because you won't be around any situation that doesn't serve you. I think I called her a devourer. I was like, you're a devourer of goodwill. And Ashleisha is a nakshatra in Vedic astrology. It's a lunar mansion. It's a symbol of a serpent. Okay. So they're known for their occult abilities, their intelligence, their wisdom, their cunning. It's Purva Bhadrapada, man, girl, I've got something to say. So it's really good for a lot of magical things, but most people just don't know what they're doing. But she was really self-aware and she didn't care. And she wrote me and she said this reading was amazing. She goes, "This is literally our relationship. I told him on our first date, I will not marry someone who doesn't work hard, and I don't work. I don't want to work." I called her lazy in the reading. I said, "You're a very lazy person." And she said, "Yeah, I don't want to struggle. I wasn't born to suffer. Like, I don't think I'm special, but I know that that's not what I want." And he said to her, "That's fine. That's okay." He finished his degree, and she said that they're both materially ambitious. So just like Shira Seven, he knew what he was getting into. He's happy to make this money, have her sitting pretty, spending, doing whatever she wants, but she's self-aware. So she's not a vampire. She's not scamming. She told, like I say to people, I'm just like, if you can't house me, I'm not going anywhere. I don't care if you rent. I don't care if you own. I don't care if you pay mortgage. If I move in, you're not paying a penny more to have me there. It defies reason and the laws that govern self-love for me to come into your living space and pay your bills. No. I don't care if you live in a bachelor. I don't care if you live in a studio. I don't care if you live in a house, in a castle, in a one bedroom, two bedroom. I don't care. The principle is I'm not going there to have the life sucked out of me. Okay. So she said the same thing up front on the first date. She said, "Oh yeah, I don't live to work. I don't work at all, actually. So if you want to roll with me, you're gonna have to, bankroll my lifestyle today." And he did. And so that's like a positive incarnation. But Purva Bhadrapada is so funny. So this is actually funny because I can't even believe it. I was just thinking about this last night. So you really read my mind. I had a reading that I done. I swear, and I mean this with my whole heart. But if I warn you against someone, I don't know what you expect. Like, please apply the advice. Okay. So if you're not a master of free will, it will not go well for you. You're going to get caught up in the current of life. Okay. Believe it or not, the man had three planets in Ashleisha, and he had, I think it was like moon or sun in Purva Bhadrapada. And I said to the person, he is not what he seems. And he doesn't even know it. He is blind to himself. Uh, he's slippery. He's a deceiver. He has one foot in a world that he lives with you and another in his own. He has another world that he lives in. I don't know if it's a different Instagram account. I don't know if it's a different partner. I don't know. I don't know. But don't take anything he says. Don't give it any credence. This it's not what it means. He doesn't mean it, okay? I'm telling you. Because the odds of someone in their 20s actually being that self-aware, unless you're practicing yogi, tantric, something where you really understand yourself and God, the chance of that is like 0.1%. Like, I don't think so, right? And she said, I'm shocked. He just ghosted me and we're over. I thought I thought that was it. But I told you not to think. I told you to watch the actions. Okay? So Purva Bhadrapada is the man with two faces. So when Purva Bhadrapada is really Vishaka is not two-faced, but Vishaka has two lives. So they're split. It's the forked one. So they'll have a public persona and a private persona. Or an example I use often is they'll have a very strong. I had a client like that. They had a very strong. They were a circuit judge, so they were very academically powerful, jurisdictional, all these, they had a crazy career, on the face of it is a very powerful person. But privately, they were completely different. They were like a clown. They went clubbing and raving, and they were active in like the club scene and the love scene and all this like crazy partying and all that. And I thought that's very Vishaka, or someone who's maybe a surgeon by day and then by night they play in a jazz band or something like that. So their creative world and their corporate world, they don't really meet. They're like two different people. Or like my personality is very gregarious and like loud and fiery. I'm very open temperament. I'm not shy. But on the other hand, in my world, I'm a very serious person. I'm very type A. I'm very driven. I'm very sensitive. I'm very protective. Like I have really like deep qualities, but you wouldn't know it because I'm like, what am I telling? Dick jokes and toilet humor, just like silliness. So that's a very interesting, like a Shisha, Purva Bhajapada. But to note, Vishaka is not deceptive. Vishaka is cruel. Okay, so Vishaka person will do what needs to be done to get what they want. It's very Machiavellian, but it's not the same thing as being like deceptive or underhanded or nuanced like Ashleisha and Purva Bhadrapada. So, but you're right, the Bhadrapada men, they're lol. So just be mindful. If you see those things in a chart, like a lot. I'm not saying they have like Mars and Ashleisha, oh my God, if they have a lot, like 2, 3 ascendant and moon or something, then they can be a bit more uh harder to handle or figure out. And don't be discouraged until you like give it your best effort, like an unnoble, honorable effort, I would say. Okay, I have a question I'd like to answer as well. This came in through Instagram yesterday. I almost forgot. I even put it on a post-it. Like, look, who am I right now? I'm always so organized. Okay, just curious. What are your thoughts on past flames coming back when manifesting a husband? This is a very good vampiric question. I'm ignoring, but have you found a correlation in your research and does it come up astrologically too? Yes and no. So yes and yes, I should say. Sometimes in a chart, you will when you do a love reading, you try to diagnose why the person cannot attract love. So basically, you have the makings, especially around eclipse season, amen. You have the makings of your perfect mate already present. But what happens is you cloud it with your human bias. So when you undertake a spiritual discipline, or ideally what we would call the first step of alchemy, which is purification, you remove those blockages from inside yourself. And then they're able to come to you. So what happens oftentimes, she said, when trying to manifest a husband. So there's one particular mantra that I give that's extremely effective, and I mean extremely, because nothing really works for me just because I think I'm so knowledgeable and I've tried so many things that I'm very skeptical, and that's why it's my own making. But when something does work for me, then I know it's been tested like 100 times and I can say very proudly it works and it works fast. That's I'm not patient. So there is a thing that you can say, a very simple discipline. It takes a minute, and it will start to attract men to you. However, what happens energetically is, if you've been dealing with whatever low frequency men, whatever, when you start to manifest, if this is really case, think of it as like layers of like protection or experiences, like not really barriers, but just what's around you. If this is very familiar to you and you've known these types of people, and this is what makes the most sense to you, right? To your psyche, this feels familiar. When you start to manifest, that is the closest thing to you. It's energetically proximate. But your ideal is over here in orbit number 5. Okay. So when you start manifesting, I said you relax and you start to purify. So you're getting rid of barriers and blockages. And who is the first thing you see? It's probably not going to be the one. It's going to be the one that was there last, because Abraham Hicks says your vibration on any subject matter is right where you left it last. So now you're no longer interested in someone who was your ex, but because vibrationally, that is the last reference point you have to love, romance, and relationships. That's what floods in. So as you start to do away with more and more and more defense systems, biases, they start to trickle in. But that doesn't mean that's your ideal. It doesn't mean that it's meant to be. It's just an energy game, because they were waiting in line for the longest, because that's what's strongest in your vibration. So I would keep doing it and not emotionally react to it. Right where you left them. Right where you left me strikes again. That's so funny. You left me. No. I like the no that she like echoes. So anyhow, they will start to come through, two, three, four, five of them, until you break through that barrier. And then the second layer, which still might not be perfect, until you finally start to just let these things wash over you without reacting to them and getting emotional. And then when you see your ideal, your whole soul will sing and you'll know it. Okay. So this did happen at an Abraham Hicks conference. This woman said she went to some, I think, like work thing or whatever. And she says, it's so crazy. I met these two guys at the same time and I wasn't even looking for it. And they just cut her off and said, well, that's not possible, is it? Because they wouldn't have come up to you if you didn't have that in your vibration. She said, I guess. But then she said, and then both of them didn't work out. And they said, that's because your vibrational essence is on the topic of rejection or things not working out, because that is the most recent thing, or that is the thing, the vibration on the topic where you last left it. That's what you're most used to, is things not working out. So don't get emotional about it. Let it pass and then move on. And the next one, next one you meet can be it. And also remember to be grateful. This is going to sound crazy, but even if things don't work out, even if you get ghosted or lied to, whatever, you are one step closer to getting what you want as a result of that. So that's the energetic kind of like mechanism of that, is not to take it personally. And Bashar talks about this as well. He calls it the echo. So basically, he says, if you have a problem, let's say you're tired of getting rejected, okay? That creates like an energetic wail, like a cry. It's very painful to you. And then the next time you date, you don't know why everything's going well. You think he's the one, but oh my God, he's a Bhadrapada. And then he rejects you or doesn't work out or he deceives you. That's an echo, because that is not the universe testing you. It's just literally what you're the most used to, right? So, if you don't emotionally react to that so strongly, the next time it will be less. And maybe the third or fourth time, that'll be it, because you have deactivated that inside yourself. You have disarmed yourself. Okay. You're not guarded. And Abraham Hicks has this thing they say that I think is just the greatest thing I've ever heard when it comes to dating. They say expectations are high and defenses are low. When you're defensive, you pretty much attract predators. That's just the truth. Okay. And why do you think talking about your traumas and your past pain attracts more predators? Because that's just what's so active inside of you. And honestly, just as a blueprint for logic, You've given them the handbook on how to mistreat you, you know? So you've got to be playful, calm, well-meaning, well-wishing, and not become like the people who hurt you. As I keep saying, hurt people hurt people. When you are those things, then you simply cannot attract people who are there to do you harm. A few weeks ago, I met someone just in passing, and I was talking about like, men should pay for everything and they should look after you. They should care about you. They should be as invested in your dreams as you are or more, because women just provide value by being there. Value, provide value by being there. You have to like I said, the man version of love is to be earned. A woman's love is just ever present inside of her because we create life. And we'll talk about it another time. Say no to the baddies. And she said, well, anytime a man has done something nice for me, he's wanted something in return. So I would just rather be the sugar mama. I would just do it myself. But I don't want to say anything else because like clearly from that point of understanding, you're not even crawling as a baby. You cannot make that quantum leap. And if I said to that person who was so defensive in that moment, but that's just you doing it to yourself, they would strangle me, right? They would leap across the table and just kill me. So I thought, you know what, just don't say anything. But really, if you take that thinking into the world, you're looking for men to do those things to you. So the whole point about like gold digging is to literally, like Shira 7 said about demons, is like, give me something because you want to give it to me, not because you want something back. It's not going to happen. And that's the truth, right? And in terms of gift giving, just out of principle and energetic principle, not just human principle, out of like universal principle, once a gift is given, it's completely out of your hands. That's the truth of life. You give a piece of advice, it's completely out of your control. The person can use it, they can abuse it, they can misuse it, they cannot use it at all. But it's not your business. It's not up to you. If you find that they waste your time as I have, I just don't do it anymore. But to say I give you this advice and you have to apply this advice, something's actually wrong with you. It comes without condition. Okay. True love comes without encumbrances. Our true soulmates, oftentimes the ones that are like happy, come without encumbrances. The ones who teach us, they can frustrate us into being. Okay. Um, so anyway, we'll talk about it another time, but come without encumbrances. Okay. So, anyways, if you want to get away from energetic vampirism, there shouldn't be such conditions to your love. But I don't mean that in terms of romantic things. This is another one. People will say, but women are vampiric. They want a man to have a job. They want a man to have those things. But you're not listening very deeply because I just said a man should give you those things without the expectation of getting something from you. That's how you know he is sincere, not you. He is sincere. You are sincere because you entertain him and because you showed up. Okay. So, both of the ways in which we show love and give love and receive love are equal, but they express themselves differently. Do you understand? So, yes, a man's aim is to provide material security, psychological safety to the woman, emotional safety to the woman. And a woman is to embellish the life of the man, right? So effectively, I'm very suspicious of men who care about my academic accolades. I'm very suspicious of men who care about my professional progress, my money. I never, ever, ever exalt those things. I do the exact opposite. I tell them I have no brain for math or logic or finances. I'm just a silly, silly girl, and if you really care, you'll sort it out. And if you don't, then it tells me that you're more like a woman than I am. And I don't want you near me. It's a self defense mechanism. Okay. So, anyway, any questions? I hope that answers the question of this lovely viewer. But that's what happens. So if you're attracting love and you've been fed upon by a vampire, even if it was a parent or I find a lot of the times some of the things that shape people aren't even our past lovers. It's a bad boss or a sibling who was really mean to us or something like that, and that shapes the way that we interact in our romantic lives. We continue to attract abusers and we start to think that the opposite sex or the same sex is all wrong and broken. But really it's a play, that it's a Greek tragedy that keeps playing on repeat inside our own minds, that you have the power to stop. Okay. And if you choose not to stop it, if you say things such as vampirism in the royal family, 100%. 100%. It's all about performance, isn't it? Love is constantly earned and calculated and measured. It's very, very bizarre. So the what was I saying? What was I saying? I need to wake up. I have green tea. I had 2 coffees. I forget. Yeah, any questions? But I'd love to do more modern dating dynamics. I think people really misunderstand that. Yeah, they really do. Okay, so I mentioned the readings up. Go check them out on Etsy. I keep meaning to put up books. I was supposed to do a buy one, get one last April, and I didn't do it. It's been a year almost, but I'm quite swamped. So please let me know what you would like to see more of. I'm happy to do a class as well. You were talking about stopping the cycle. Yeah, oh my God. Okay. So I don't want to say you only have yourself to blame because that's really harsh and it's not what I mean. But thank you, Megan. If you are practicing emotional awareness, taking back your power, meditation, law of attraction, tantra, magic of any kind, okay? The thing that you come to realize very, very quickly is what you do to another, you ultimately do to yourself. And people don't want to admit that. They don't want to acknowledge it. That's why I always say magical things like curses come back to you 3 times worse. Da, da, da. There are some exceptions to this. Okay. I don't want to get into it here, but that's very 2D thinking. It's very dualistic and black and white. It's not ultimately the truth. But because the greater consciousness is so unenlightened, that is definitely what they will get the evidence of. So basically, when you start to become more self-aware and wake up and realize your own power, you understand every good thing that you perceive to be happening to you, you are the creator of. Likewise, everything that you consider, every little thing that you consider undesirable happening to you is also what you're responsible for. Note I didn't use the word fault. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Like Jan Van Zant said in a Q&A, someone said, if you get cheated on, whose fault is it? She said, it's no one's fault, but you're responsible for your own heart. You're responsible for your own healing. You're responsible for your own decision making. So this is what you come to realize is in the universe, in the way that things operate in the cosmos, and certainly on our plane of existence. You cannot in all in you cannot intelligently articulate to me that someone is responsible for how you feel about yourself. That all that tells me is you have a very small understanding of who you really are, and the magnitude of your being here is not an accident. You have more power than you realize. So all it tells me is you don't know your own power. Okay. And it doesn't come from another person. Another person cannot make you that happy. Okay. Me with my hex drawer, I'm just a girl. It's so funny. So I did hear someone say last week, they said, the more magic that you do, the more you realize how responsible you are for your own life. And I think that's very true. So when it comes to breaking the cycle, you really take your own power back, but it's internal. So like our friend said earlier, I tried stopping doing all these things. It causes a fight. You cannot do that. You have to take inspired action, which means you have to regain your power inside yourself first, emotionally and mentally. Okay. You have to reflect. I said we have to reflect. Also, this is a channel by an occultist for occultists. And the real the real work, I would say, or the fun and the joy of the unseen is that it's not spoon fed to you. I'm not going to spoon feed you answers. You have to read between the lines and figure it out yourself. Like a Lana Del Rey song. You have to look past just a fun melody and things rhyming, like she said. You have to actually like think about it and feel it and experience it. Okay. So words can only take you so far. Words don't really teach. Your life experience will show you. So when you stop emotionally reacting and mentally defining that person's my enemy, that person's bad, I'm good, they're this, but I'm different, it's all the same. So I remember, was it yesterday or the day before, 2 days ago or something like that? What day is it? Yeah, 2 days ago on Friday. I had a couple of drivers behave very strangely on the road. I'm not prone to road rage. I think it's unintelligent behavior, so I don't partake personally. But I had some people just wild, like weaving into my lane or one person stopped to let someone turn. So you know what, as a car is turning and you're coming out, you go because traffic has stopped. I did that. And the girl, I don't know what she was thinking because I have like an SUV. You can see me. She could see me. She was an SUV. She gunned it and it was a red light. And then she went and she freaked out at me. And I just laughed. I just thought that's so funny. I don't know why. I thought that was so funny. I thought, where's she doing? Where's she going to go? It's a red light. And I was like the second car in line. I thought, where you going, girl? But she was so adamant to blame me for something. And then I thought, but I did that. I did that because I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And I mean, the minute I opened my eyes, I was like, something's weird today. But I couldn't stay home. I was motivated to go out and do and take action and be da 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 da, you stupid stuff, right? So I pushed myself against my own will in the hopes of being productive. And I manifested people who were what? In a rush and scattered, just as I was. But I had the energetic intelligence and the sense to see myself reflected in that mindlessness in others. So even though I wasn't bobbing and weaving through traffic and being reckless, energetically, I influenced that. I influenced that. That was me. So I thought, oh, okay, sometimes I don't know, you attract rude staff, you attract rude waiters or whatever, retail workers or mechanics or dentists. Just ask yourself, how did I feel that day? And what can I do about that? Because you don't even understand how much power you have until you decide to take responsibility. But decide is really the key word because it's not something you actually want to do. Why would you want to acknowledge your own jerkiness and your jerkhood? You don't want to be a jackass, you know? But when you see it in others, you go, what did I do to do that? And then one that you get a lot of the time is people say, but I was a victim and that person's a bully. So sometimes it's not the same, but it's the polar opposite, but it's on the same frequency. It's on the same dimension of plane of existence. So if a person is afraid of being hurt, they are vibrating fear, and abusers are fearful. They're people who are afraid that nobody will be around them if they're truly themselves. So the only way that they can grab people and keep them is by abusing them. So you're both fearful. So you're a match made in heaven. A bully and a victim, mwah, they go well together. Accountability is tough for the Western world. That's a really good point. I've noticed in the West, there is a chronic need to be intellectually superior and to intellectualize everything. So if you cannot intellectualize feeling, human experience, emotion, whatever, it's inferior and not as supreme or divine. That's why I think here we have such a distaste for things like spirituality and religion. And if you say that to someone, I mean, like even like on TikTok, you're like, oh, I'm really lucky. I had religious parents. I grew up in a religious country. Um, they immediately say, oh, it's so much abuse because look at the statistics, look at the facts. But have you ever experienced it? And the only ones who will say I have, and it was abusive. Well, clearly, I don't mean you. You're an outlier. I mean, the majority of people are happy they had values or a compass or something, or they think deeply. I did meet a religious person recently as well, and they said there's nothing wrong with my religion or most religions. It's people, how they interpret it, how they translate it, and ultimately their culture. But that's your culture. That's not the actual book. So I was like, yeah, that's the fact. They don't want to be accountable for that. They want to have something particular to blame. A good one of those is the breakdown of relationships. Adele in an interview said something about her second album. She said it was really hard because for the first one, it was so particular, like you screwed another girl. That's why we broke up and I wrote this album. But she said my second serious relationship, we just fell out of love. And it was more painful because there wasn't anything specific. I couldn't say you did that to me. It was us. So, when you realize it's also you are in there and you're just angry with yourself. So we karmically did something to have the parents we have. Okay. No, because when you say I must have done something to have this, it implies badness or punishment. Karma is the law of cause and effect. Another interpretation of karma I find only in Western culture is one of victimhood or punishment. Watering a plant can be karma. You pour water on a plant, it grows and blooms, it becomes a beautiful thing. That's karma. It's cause and effect. Karma isn't something that grabs hold of your soul and doesn't let go. And so, even the wording to say, I did something for this to have happened, is not accurate because it's not by default, it's not an accident. You actually choose your parents before you're born. And most people will say, I would never do that. That's crazy. But when you understand the value in that relationship, you can never go back from what you see now. I remember one of my teachers, when we were talking about relationship astrology, he said, good relationships are easy and you actually are not very enlightened by the experience. It's the negative relationships that shape people and actually make them better if you use them wisely. So if you reflect honestly, and that's the key word, if you honestly reflect on your breakups or your family dynamics, you will accelerate in growth 90% faster than the happy, oblivious people. But if you say, this was really hard for me, so everything is hard, and like I said again, it's dualistic. That person is bad and I'm a good person. I don't deserve that. That's not the point. The point is not judgment. The point is not blame. It's acceptance. Because when you accept something, you neutralize it. You become indifferent. That's why I said you have to emotionally and mentally move away from that type of vampirism. So when you neutralize it in your own spirit, it just stops hurting you. And then they have to change because you have changed. So karmically, you didn't do something to have your parents. You joyfully chose your parents because you wanted to experience that growth. They're actually necessary for you. You wouldn't be who you are. Without others, you could not be you. And oftentimes, when we hear that, we think it's because you're happily married or you have the best child who just won the spelling bee. That's nice. But that's not that important. The important ones are the worst ones, you know? And I know we're all thinking the worst possible case scenario can't be good for you because it's the worst possible case scenario. But in terms of soul expansion, your spirit being is not emotional around your human experience the way that you are. It just sees it as really, really valuable. Okay. So once you reincarnate, you're not going to find anything that difficult, you know? So you're going to come back and do something crazy all over again. But yeah, you choose your parents very joyfully. And chances are you were their parents in another life. Chances are you've done something to them. So I don't remember who exactly, but one astrologer, he said this woman came to him and she just could not fathom why her husband was so terrible to her, violent, in fact. And he looked at her chart, but she didn't tell him what was wrong. He was just looking at her chart. He got to her Navamsha, and he said to her very blatantly, you lit him on fire in a past life while he slept in bed and killed him. So, unprovoked, he would just lash out at her. And so she thought, oh, it must be karma. But if you're really enlightened, you'd say, like, my God, like, who cares? That was in another incarnation. Is anyone even thinking about that? So because she laughed it off, she just thought it was so stupid. And I think it's so stupid. It just stopped happening because she just thought, like, oh my God, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, just like went away basically in an instant. Hope that makes sense. So whether you did or didn't do something to them is not relevant. What's relevant is that you choose to find ways to be happy now, wherever you are, to the best of your ability. That's your work. But the work has to be done. And I said you. So that means, regardless of how someone else reacts, you have to find a way to be happy. So basically, if you think about like the overbearing mother archetype, if you always have to be doing something to ensure that woman's happy so the whole family doesn't suffer, don't be that way. Don't say, I will be happy when my mom does this, when my dad says this, when my siblings or when my partner. No, because you can't hold them emotionally hostage the way that they've held you, right? Hurt people, hurt people. To break the cycle, you free yourself. You say, no matter what you do, I choose to be happy. I'm just going to ignore it. It's just not going to affect me. It's hard, but it's very, very possible. And I think it's a lot easier when you're older because you're a lot more rational or you're a lot more calm. And um, we just have less sense of urgency after a certain age. So it's just a lot easier. Okay. Once again, I've ran over, but I had so much fun. Thank you for being here. So we've covered that. We can do more. I think maybe the third one can be something to the effect of just pure love. Just how do you have a pure loving relationship? Void of any kind of void is a good word, free of any kind of vampirism. So once again, thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna go and enjoy the rest of my Sunday. I hope you do too. And I'll hopefully see you next week. I've been MIA on TikTok. I've been busy learning. And yeah, I love you. Thank you so much. Let me know if you need anything. Bye, everyone. Love you. Bye bye. Thank you.